Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ruben Gonzalez, and I'm the Executive Director of the LGBTQ Victory Institute. I'm thrilled to welcome you tonight to this important conversation, Transgender Rights in 2021. Victory is really excited to partner with our friends at the Equality Federation to bring you this event, and we've recruited two incredible leaders from our network of nearly 1,000 LGBTQ elected officials who are on the front lines for this fight for equality and are going to share their perspectives along with some other incredible speakers tonight. Before I introduce you to our next speaker, please note that we'll have networking time through this platform, Remo, later this hour. If this is your first time using Remo, it's just like a cocktail party or some of the DC networking events that we probably all miss so much, but just slightly more awkward because we're doing this from our home and maybe you're wearing pajama pants on the bottom. I recommend that you use a desktop or a laptop for this event so you can get sort of the full scope of the tables and be able to see more. It's also helpful to have a drink of choice, whether that's water, coffee, or a cocktail. It also makes things move a lot more smoothly as you're hopping from table to table. It's pretty easy to move from table to table. You can double click on any empty chair and then you will join that particular group. And you can self-navigate and mingle with as many people as you'd like throughout the evening once we wrap this main presentation piece. If you have any questions or issues, please feel free to contact us through the chat box on your right side. You can also share your thoughts and insights as the discussion begins. We would love to have you be a part of the conversation as well. And with that, it is my pleasure to welcome Fran Hutchins, Equality Federation's Executive Director, to our virtual stage. Hi, Fran.
Hello, thank you. Thank you so much, Ruben, for the introduction. And welcome everyone to our premier virtual event all about the states, Transgender Rights in 2021. And we are so excited to partner with Victory Fund on this event. Equality Federation, for those of you who are new to us, we are an advocacy accelerator rooted in social justice, building power in our network of state-based lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer LGBTQ advocacy organizations. From Equality Florida to Freedom Oklahoma to Equality Texas, we amplify the power of the state-based LGBTQ movement. And so we are so excited to have folks here tonight for this exciting conversation. We have Michelle Rayner, Representative Michelle Rayner from the Florida House of Representatives. We have Representative Stephanie Byers from the Kansas House of Representatives, Ricardo Martinez, Executive Director of one of our member groups, Equality Texas, and it is going to be hosted by Vivian Topping, who is Equality Federation's Director of Advocacy and Civic Engagement. And unfortunately, Chase Strangio, Deputy Director for Trans Justice at ACLU, is unable to join us, but our very own Vivian will be able to discuss all of the things that are happening at a national level. And so our event tonight is not just to inform, but also to support the work of Victory Institute and Equality Federation. So you can make a donation, and this will go in the chat at eqfed.org/transrights2021. You can make a donation at any time tonight at that link. And we are thrilled to share with you that the wonderful Ian Zhang, who is a friend to both Equality Federation and LGBTQ Victory Institute, is generously matching all donations tonight up to $5,000, which will have a real impact in this fight. Ian has been and will be a force in this movement. And so thank you so much in advance for your support and your generosity in joining him in contributing to this cause. And our conversation today is so important, given the onslaught of attacks that we've seen against the transgender community in state legislatures this session. You know, the types of anti-LGBTQ legislation we've seen in 2021 are, really similar to what we've seen in previous years, but it's really clear that our opponents have zeroed in on a new target: transgender children. And we've seen this in attempts to ban trans youth from accessing healthcare and from playing sports in their schools and communities. And although these two categories have gotten a lot of press and cover the majority of the specifically anti-trans legislation introduced in this session, they are of course not the only attacks we're seeing. We've seen efforts to limit access to appropriate identity documents, to prevent trans folks from using the appropriate restroom and changing facilities, attempts to exclude trans women from homeless shelters, to allow additional discrimination in medical care, not just for the young folks. We've seen bills that would prohibit discussion of LGBTQ people and identities in schools, and also to allow aggressive misgendering of trans students. And that's just a few of the bills. And the numbers that we've seen are really sobering. We've seen, we're tracking now more than 1,000 bills that would affect LGBTQ people, and 335 of those are anti-LGBTQ bills. 150 of those solely target trans people. And those anti-trans bills now include those 75 athlete bans in 33 states, 40 healthcare bans across 22 states, and 16 bathroom-related bills. And thankfully, due to the hard work of our member organizations and their partners in the states and across the country, many of these bills have been defeated. And as of May 17th, however, we've seen 50 anti-LGBTQ bills, 50, including 26 anti-trans bills, either passed or remain significantly in play. And so, sadly, in Florida, for the first time in more than 20 years, we've seen an anti-LGBTQ bill. An athlete ban has passed the legislature and is currently awaiting the governor's signature. In Kansas, Governor Kelly vetoed an effort by the legislature to ban transgender athletes from participating in sports. And in Texas, more than 35 anti-LGBTQ bills were filed this session. Several are still in play, but Equality Texas and our partner TENT, Transgender Education Network of Texas, have been fiercely fighting to stop the majority of these attacks. And as of today, I believe we haven't even gotten one out of committee. So we'll hear more about that from Ricardo. And, this is an incredibly difficult session. I want to acknowledge, especially for the trans folks who are in this movement and who are doing this work. But we are so grateful for the tireless efforts of LGBTQ elected officials and the advocates on the ground who are fighting for equality. So I'm going to hand it over to Vivian, and let's have this conversation and hear it from the folks who are doing the work on the ground.
Hi, Fran. Yeah, welcome. Thank you. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for being here. We can bring up the rest of our panel. So Representative Rayner, Representative Byers, and Ricardo, if you would like to come up quickly so we can introduce you. And then we'll have you walk right off. There we go. Welcome Representative Rayner. Hi, everyone. My name is Vivian Topping. You can call me Viv. I am the Director of Advocacy and Civic Engagement here at the Equality Federation, and based in Washington, D.C., but originally from Michigan. So I just want to give folks a chance real quick to introduce yourselves before I set up the rest of our conversation. And so we can just do name, pronouns, your title and affiliation, and where you're calling in from today. And I'll call each of you out quickly. So Representative Rayner, why don't you start us off?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Michelle Rayner. My pronouns are she, they, and I am hailing from Florida. I represent House District 70 in the Florida House. We're currently kind of sort of in special session. We've adjourned, but haven't signed died. So we're here now. And I'm so currently in Tallahassee right now, but my district encompasses St. Petersburg, Manatee, Hillsborough, and Manatee County, in Sarasota counties in Florida.
Thank you, Representative Rayner. Representative Byers, how about you go next?
So I am Stephanie Byers, she, her, and I am a representative in the Kansas House of Representatives. My district is 86, which is pretty much in central Wichita, Kansas, an urban district, mostly blue collar. And so I'm sitting here in Wichita right now. Our sine die comes up in 1 week from today. And even though our governor has vetoed an anti-trans girls in sports bill, our Senate president is threatening to tie it with another one and bringing it up on sine die. So it's a zombie that we keep having to go back after over and over again.
Thank you, Representative Byers. And Ricardo, close us off for introductions.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ricardo Martinez, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Equality Texas. I am currently coming to you live from a very bright office here in Austin, a half a mile away from the Capitol, conveniently located for our advocacy work here. I use he, him, his pronouns, and happy to be part of this discussion. Thanks for including me.
Of course, thank you. So Before we kind of get to the rest of the panel, I want to give a moment just for folks to be able to kind of understand the context of where we are in this legislative session. So Fran had already mentioned the number of bills that have been introduced and how many are kind of moving and passed. To be really clear, there have been 4 times as many anti-transgender bills introduced in 2021 than there were just 2 years ago. Half of those bills focus on youth athletes, and a quarter of them focus on denying best practice medical care to transgender youth. 29 different anti-LGBTQ bills have been, 14 of which specifically target transgender youth, have already been signed and enacted by governors across the country. And like Fran said, there's roughly about 21 more that could potentially be moving or could potentially pass over the next few weeks. Just last week, the NCAA released championship schedules for Division I softball tournaments. And despite a recent statement desiring that wherever they hold championships be a safe environment for all players, games will be played in 3 different states that have passed athlete bans: Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi. And just yesterday, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee signed his 5th anti-transgender bill into law just this session. And remember with Tennessee as well, last year, they were one of the only states before the pandemic forced many legislatures to shut down to pass an anti-LGBTQ bill, one that explicitly made it possible for adoption and foster care agencies to discriminate against people based on their religious beliefs. Now, federally, despite these issues, these difficult fights at the states, we are seeing strong progress for LGBTQ people. Not only do we have an administration that isn't attacking transgender people, we have an administration that is actively working to affirm the rights of transgender people. Recently, the Biden administration has issued executive orders that direct agencies to include sexual orientation and gender identity when enforcing sex discrimination claims. They ended Trump's ban on transgender people in the military, and they declared that educational environments must be free of discrimination on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity. This kind of movement is incredibly important and shows the federal government seeing transgender folks across the country and really pushing the work to be able to have more transgender folks accepted here. At the same time, we're seeing fights in the courts over transgender people. In Hecox v. Little, Lindsay Hecox, a transgender youth athlete in Idaho, has sued her state for passing a ban on transgender athletes. Fulton v. Philadelphia, a court case concerning whether or not adoption agencies can refuse service to LGBTQ people based on their religious beliefs, was heard last fall, and the opinion is expected to be released sometime this summer. And finally, we are closer than ever to being able to pass the Equality Act, a landmark non-discrimination law that would update existing protections to include sexual orientation and gender identity. And so as we come into this conversation, we are coming into a conversation where there are so many good things that are happening at the federal level while still seeing these difficult attacks that all 3 of our panelists have endured today. And I also like to note briefly, just as we're kind of going through this presentation, I want to thank all 3 of you for being here, because all 3 of you are either in active legislative sessions or have just come out of a legislative session. And as someone who has worked those, I understand just how stressful that can be. So thank you so much. So we're going to start with Representative Byers and Representative Rayner. So both of you are legislators who are also part of the LGBTQ community, and you both achieved historic wins in your race. What has this session been like for you? And I think we're going to start with Representative Byers, and then Representative Rayner will come to you.
All of the experienced legislators in the State House in Kansas have told me that this is very different. Of course, this is being my first time. This is how it always seems to me to be. But my understanding is that as they begin their legislative session, they usually start off with pieces of legislation that are fairly easy, things like updating license plates and things like that to give us a chance to learn how the process is. We hit the ground running with a proposed amendment to our Kansas Constitution that right now in Kansas, our Supreme Court has said that abortion is a constitutional right in the state. And we hit the ground running to defend that right on the Democratic side, but attacked on the other side to put it up for a popular vote. And that was my introduction to legislation in Kansas, something as strong as an anti-abortion amendment. And we've moved on from there. We encountered almost immediately the trans health care bills, banning health care for trans kids. We managed to keep that one from even coming into a committee. And then shortly afterwards, the anti-trans girls and women's sports bill. One that we fought in committee and then turned around and fought it again on the House floor, fought it on the Senate floor, and then the governor vetoed it and watched it return again to the Senate, where her veto was fortunately sustained. It's an interesting thing when you walk down the halls of the State House and you're seeing people who are talking to you, who are friendly with you, who smile at you, who comment to you, and then watch them walk onto the floor of the House with you and turn around and vote against your very existence.
Representative Rayner, I know Florida has been a rough time, so let's move to you.
Yes, I can definitely just understand and really share with what Representative Byers was talking about. So in the Florida House, it's myself and many of you know Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith, who is amazing champion. And so he and I were the LGBTQ caucus in the House, and then we had Senator Jones and Chevron Jones in the Senate. So, you know, I was in this process as an aide. So obviously it's very different as an aide now that you're the member. But I never remembered it being this hard. And so, you know, to Representative Byers' points, there were folks that shared with me, hey, this is probably one of the most difficult sessions they've ever had. And it wasn't just difficult because it was COVID and the Capitol was closed, which is a whole other conversation for another day, because all of a sudden, magically, the Capitol is reopened. But there's that, right? So, so here, you know, the Capitol is closed, but then literally we started day one with House Bill 1, which I call Hate Bill 1, which is essentially the anti-protest bill, which was in response to, you know, the George Floyd murder and the murder of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. And so, and then we had heard rumblings of, yeah, there's going to be an anti-trans bill. I was like, they absolutely wouldn't do this. No, you would not do this. And, they did. And it was just, there's a video floating around of me actually sobbing on the floor because the provisions in the anti-trans youth bill was really, the initial provision was that in order to verify what someone's gender identity is, a child's gender identity, is that there would be a genital check. That is one of the ways that there would be a way to verify. And so we fought it all the way through committee, and it got to the floor. And what I didn't understand, what I can't still, even today, I still cannot even really just fathom of the harm that we knew that it would cause. And literally as a body, we were willing to sanction state sanctioned sexual assault, because that's really what it is. When you are doing that to a child, it was beyond belief. And so, you know, it was killed in the Senate, and at the late hour, children were horse traded literally for a right to farm bill. So what happened was we had killed it in the Senate. We thought, okay, good, this is not going anywhere. There was a right to farm bill, which is the Senate president's baby. He is running to be the agricultural commissioner. So it had been sitting on the governor's desk for about 2 weeks after it passed. And the governor has issues with sugar and all of those kinds of things. He needed this bill for his base, because this, be very clear, at CPAC, the former president, 45, said this was one of their agendas that was at CPAC. So in order to get this right to farm bill signed, the children were used as pawns and horse traded, because that's really what happened, in order for it to sail through. And of course, we were supposed to be happy and placated with there were no genital inspections. I have very colorful words to say for that, but let's suffice it to say we were not placated. We were not happy with it. And I was like, yo, I'm ready to go home. It was like day 58 of a 68 session. I was like, y'all got it. Like, y'all got it. Because it was just unbelievable and unconscionable. And of course, our governor has not signed it yet, but it is forthcoming. And it, to me, was just cruelty upon cruelty. And so, and it was very hard that, oh, Rep. Rayner, we love you. You're so great. You're so wonderful. No, you don't love me. Because if you loved me, you wouldn't vote against my humanity, other folks' humanity, you wouldn't do what you're doing. I'm literally a trained civil rights attorney sobbing on the floor of the House. Carlos Guillermo Smith sobbing on the floor of the House. We had State Senator Victor Torres, his granddaughter is transgender, sobbing. One state senator, she had to be let off the floor because her daughter is transgender. People crying, saying, see the humanity of our loved ones, of our people. And no. Because at the end of the day, while I'm not transgender, I understand this. If you would do it to our most vulnerable, that train is never late for anybody else. It's never late. And so, am I disappointed? 100%. Like, y'all know how I really, like, I'm gonna let Ricardo go because I could really go in. But yeah, it was trash, pure trash.
Yeah. I mean, Representative Rayner, I do just want to say, I was watching that debate on the last day on day 58, and you all put up such an amazing fight. And so thank you for that. You and Representative Byers, the work that you are doing in your state legislatures is so incredibly important. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I do want to note one more thing, just like the historic nature of Florida right now, that this bill, this athlete ban, will be the first anti-LGBTQ bill signed into law in Florida in 23 years. And just seeing the amount of cruelty that went into forcing that bill through, and the lack of empathy was just so incredibly hard.
It's the culture wars. Our governor is more concerned about becoming president than governing the people of the state of Florida. When we're in the middle of a pandemic, we're in the middle of unprecedented unemployment issues. We're in the middle of affordable housing crisis. He's worried about placating daddy 45, and instead of being the governor of the state of Florida, because we're passing bills that nobody's asked for. Nobody asked for this.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate your words and Representative Byers. You don't have to apologize at all. We are so grateful for your voice and for your work here. So thank you. So I want to turn to Ricardo in Texas. You know, where we've seen 35 anti-LGBTQ bills introduced, the most in the nation. And y'all have been seeing these bills impact folks on both sides of the aisle. We've seen some issues from Democrats, you've seen issues from Republicans. What strategies are you all taking right now to ensure that legislators understand the gravity of these bills?
First, I just want to say that we are not proud to be number one in this case, right? This is not something to be proud of. This escalated attack that is coordinated and intentional is not okay. But these are the cards that we have been dealt, right? And so we have to mobilize and engage our folks in a strategy to be able to defeat all of these bills. So there are so many barriers outside of just the 36 bills that have been filed this session, right? It's COVID, it's the challenges getting through the Capitol, it's people traveling, people have lost their jobs. Texas is one of the largest states in the country, right? If you wanted to engage in advocacy and you're coming from East Texas, West Texas, South Texas, it just takes so much money to even come to the Capitol in person and be able to share your voice and uplift your voice. So part of what we wanted to do was ensure that there was a mechanism, a tool for folks, regardless of where you were, to have your voice heard. So we created a portal of our own when the legislature did not create a solid and reliable way to have your voice heard and deliver written testimony. So we collected the testimony for everyone that wanted to submit their voice. We printed it out manually, 20 copies each, and we walked it over to the Capitol and submitted to the clerk for every single hearing that we had this session. We took on the grunt work that was necessary for people to be able to have their voice heard, right? We, as the session progressed, began to ask folks to, as you access vaccinations, we would love for you to take this act of courage and come with us, right? Come in person, because that's going to be the most meaningful thing you can do this session. So turning out people for hearings, creating safe, socially distanced areas or rooms within the Capitol for people to feel a sense of community and feel separated enough to still understand that maybe their health is being prioritized, right? When we had people come, they were feeling supported. We coordinated visits with parents. We did a lot of lit drops, right? There's a lot of misinformation happening, and the folks that are in opposition to LGBTQ equality are not going to stop from going into the Capitol and distributing misinformation, dropping them, sliding them under doors. So we have to counter that stuff. And so we have a tremendous amount of incredible interns and volunteers who were able to go into the Capitol every single time that something was dropped and counter that opposition with truth. And we continued our calls, our pass-through calls, our emails. We did public events that we'd never done before. So we did a projection outside of the governor's mansion of our testimony that we recorded via video from our constituents' submissions. We closed captioned them. We put them up so that people could read them. We have been doing rally after rally after rally, centering the stories of parents and the direct impact and harm that these bills may have on Texans, right? And not only if they become law, but what's actually happening now, right? Because there's impact that is happening now that is trickling down to our schools. These bills are putting a target on the backs of transgender people by othering them, right? And what's happening, the harm is done. Regardless of whether or not we have a bill that passes or not, the harm, the dehumanization of transgender people has already occurred here in Texas, right? So you can tell me that you're trying to practice harm reduction by watering down a horrible bill, but you've already done enough harm for kids, right? And that is irreparable, and we're going to have to get really busy to heal our communities because of the harm that they have been subjected to. So besides all of that stuff, with the lip dropping, uplifting stories, it's just really being able to pivot at any given moment with all the surprises and counter some of the offensive things that people are doing with, again, truth and people power.
Thank you, Ricardo. And you all have been putting up such an amazing fight right now. And so thank you for the work that you're doing in your entire coalition and your entire staff right now. I know that you are all working tirelessly every day to stop those bills in Texas.
Let me be explicit about this too, really quickly, Vivian.
Yeah.
We cannot do this alone, right? We have not a formal coalition, but we have over 250 grassroots organizations across Texas that work on the local level or a regional level that we give opportunities to become engaged, right? We have some folks that have a tremendous amount of resources and power, like HRC, TFN, Texas Freedom Network, Human Rights Campaign, the Transgender Education Network of Texas, the ACLU, Lend Illegal. We are all doing this together because we have to. It takes every single one of us to be able to hold the line.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So for all three of you, this is, you've all talked about this. This is an incredibly difficult session. Not only are there these attacks against transgender kids, we're also seeing attacks on reproductive justice, attacks on abortion, attacks on literally anything under the sun, you name it, there's probably something happening. So how are you all, what's keeping you going? And I think that's one of the questions too that we had in the Q&A, we can just answer here already. How are you keeping yourselves going and how are you keeping your people going? And whoever would like to start can start us off.
I'll go ahead and start. Keeping myself going, if I don't speak out, who's going to? As Ricardo was saying, we have a coalition of individuals, but they don't necessarily have the same access that I do when I walk the halls. And so, that's a very important part. I spent 32 years as an educator, and I am used to speaking up for people that sometimes don't have a voice, whether it's in a school board meeting or with an administrator or with fellow teachers or even within my own students. But this is different because there's so much more at stake here. And so I do. And I'm fortunate to be married to a wonderful woman who is there to catch me when I have those hard times and I come home. I'm also fortunate in that I am not the only LGBT legislator in the Kansas State House, that I have two very good friends that are also there with me, and the three of us make up our own little Rainbow Caucus, and we work this together. And we work hand in hand with the executive director of Equality Kansas so that we have our support system. But even with that, it still takes its toll. I was sworn in with 6 other women who were freshman Democrat legislators, and they have been my support system and my back. We get referred to as you may know, the Kansas is known as the Sunflower State. And so we get referred to as the Sunflower Super Squad. But I couldn't imagine a better group of individuals to be with, and they are there to help. So that when I stood and gave testimony against the anti-trans girls and women's sports bill and our Senate Education Committee, When I finished, I turned around and seated there in the visitors row where we don't allow anybody in the Kansas State Capitol right now because of COVID, other than people that have a business to be there. But there were my 6 sisters right there, you know, and when we left the room, they were the first ones out to make sure that they came and they were there for me. So we have that support and those allies are there. We just need to make sure that we get as much vocal support as we can, because we know that more people are against this type of legislation than for it. But for some reason, it doesn't translate into the politicians who push these things.
Yeah, so I would probably echo everything that represents. So as many of you know, I am part of the trifecta. So it is Representative Angie Nixon and Representative Charles McCurdy. We are freshmen. You may see our videos with trap music walking the halls of the Capitol. I will tell you the moment when I just, there's a picture of myself and Representative McCurdy and Representative Hardy. We were in a press conference at Equality Florida, and many of you know the amazing, incomparable Nadine Smith, who is just, like I see Ricardo smiling, who is amazing. Her and her team, like John Harris Maurer, who is the advocacy lead and is their legal lobbyist and counsel for them, they really held us up. Like, I will tell you, just the work that our activists are doing and the organizations are doing, that's what kept us going. When there are moments that I kind of was like, what's happening? Like, what is this gonna look like? Thank God people at some point weren't able to get in the Capitol, because, you know, while there were so many people that were against it, there was, you know, that faction of crazy that, you know, that agreed with this, right? And you know, so the nasty grams came, but it was really, you know, my fellow legislators that really held me up. There's a picture of myself and Representative McCarty and Representative Amari Hardy just holding me as I was sobbing. And I think it was so powerful in that, because there is a myth and there's this lie that Black men don't get it, right? That, you know, cis-het Black men don't get it. And these men, including Representative Christopher Benjamin, who is the first Muslim man to even be elected to the Florida House, you know, speaking on behalf of our, you know, our transgender youth. And so it was powerful in that as well. And it was also powerful in that to see, you know, Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith, like, he and I would just hold each other. And then, you know, I turned around as I'm speaking and all, you know, all of the caucus is behind me. And then my wife is amazing. She's the bee's knees. Like, she's everything. And, you know, she, a lot of days would just allow me just to call and vent and FaceTime and just let me take up a lot of space. And sometimes I would forget to ask her about her day, and she would be okay with that. And so I'm really lucky, like, to have her. I'm really lucky to have a person that understands that, to Representative Byers' point, if I'm not here, then who? My predecessor, I will tell you, if he was here, he would have sold our transgender youth down the river. If it meant an appropriation, he would have voted in favor of this bill if he could get appropriation. And having people come up to me and say, I'm so grateful you're here. Mom's texting me, DMing me. That is like, that's what I'm doing this for. That our babies, they need us. Our babies need us. And that is what we're doing it for. Oh God, y'all, I'm crying. That is what we're doing it for. Our babies need us. And so, yeah, that's what keeps me going.
I'm taking a pause because I want people to internalize that, because I think it's incredible that this is passion work for people, right? And when you hear us choke up, it's because we believe in this and we understand the urgency and the magnitude of this moment, right? I have mentioned this a couple of times, but I struggle being ordinary when you are expected to be extraordinary during extraordinary times, right? And so for me, this is a mandate, right? What keeps me going is that I have life, I have purpose, and I have talent. And I know that. And as long as I have all of those three things, I'm going to keep going, because I have met the people that are being directly impacted by these proposed legislation, right? I have met trans kids who just want to be themselves, who want to not stand out, whose humanity they don't want questioned, right? And that don't want to be othered. And I can think of 2 or 3 kids that I just met this session that I refer back to, right? When I go home and if I'm in my car and I think about these kids, I know that regardless of how tired I am, it is up to the amount of effort that we put that is going to essentially protect their futures, right? And that's what we want. We want to protect all of the kids here in Texas and across the country, right? Because we understand the influence that Texas has as a state on our nation. And I think we also have, at least for me, I have an opportunity to shift the accepted normalization of trauma associated with policymaking, right? I came to Texas, and the one thing that I heard all the time was like, oh, it's going to be so traumatic, it's going to be so traumatic, but it was accepted as such, right? And I don't think that we have to normalize the trauma associated with making policy. And there's an opportunity here to shift that narrative and to do things, tangible things, to move away from having to be re-traumatized every 2 years, because that stuff lingers and it has a deep impact in the spirit of everyone who's engaged in advocacy, because this is passion work, right? We take this home, we believe in it, and it's hard to uplift yourself, right? But you have to be mindful of bringing yourself back to center. And how do I keep people going on my team? I work with an incredible team, right? And I try to practice things that are tangible. So like I try to give them 24 hours between the end of the day on Friday and Saturday night to at least give them a day. If I need them on Saturday night, I will email them on Saturday night, but I try to protect their time as much as possible. I try not to, if I'm feeling like someone's overwhelmed, but they want to continue to contribute, not put something else on top, spend the money necessary to be able to increase our capacity in the short term.
Thank you all so much for being so vulnerable here. I know this is an incredibly difficult session, and you know, as a trans woman going through this session too, like this is incredibly hard. And so thank you all so much. We have one last bit as part of our conversation. I do want to remind folks that if you want to ask questions of anyone on the panel, feel free to use the Q&A section. I've been keeping track of those here as we've been kind of going through, but feel free to use the Q&A section to answer a question. And a brief reminder that we are having donations matched here up to $5,000 during this event. So if you have not given already, or if you feel so moved to give, we would love to see donations from y'all. So lastly, the impact of these bills, you've all already talked about how these get felt not just because of passage, but just the mere introduction. And not just by folks who are in your state, but in other states across the country. And you know, I personally know a lot of trans people who see these bills and get really afraid and get really scared. And so whether they're adults, whether they're trans youth, what is a message, and just like a short thing, because I know that we're also running close on time because we are a wonderful panel. And so you've had a lot of great things to say, but what's a message that you would want to send to transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people? And we can start with Ricardo and go around this time. So Ricardo, Rep. Byers, and Rep. Rayner.
I guess a message that I would have for folks is that you have inherent value as a human being, right? And that there's a community across Texas and across the country that really has your best interest in mind. That people are advocating for you, and it may not feel that you may be feeling the weight of this session, but that shouldn't impact your self-worth because others' opinions about you don't matter. And I know that that's probably an oversimplification, especially feeling the brunt of 36 bills here. But we are perfect as we are, and the world is just going to have to catch up to our amazingness and uniqueness and brilliance.
I would add, we're not done. We will stand fight all the way. And there really are more people that are in your corner. Even if they don't speak out, they are there. And our job is to try to encourage them to add their voices to this chorus. That we know we're on the right side of history. When this bill came to the floor in Kansas House, it was deathly silent when I walked up to our microphone to speak, because they know they're on the wrong side of history. They know that what they're doing is not correct. We just have to make sure that those of us who are on the right side, we continue to add our voices to that chorus, and we speak out loudly and clearly. And when it comes up again, we fight again, and we constantly will, because you are incredibly valuable. And I will do whatever I can. I know that other people on this panel will do whatever they can to ensure that you have the same rights, the same freedoms as every American across this country. And we won't stop until that battle is finally won.
So I would say that, one, I know that life has gotten a little bit scarier for people, because you see it happening in one state. You think, well, is it going to happen in my state? And I will tell you, I see that, I hear that. But to echo Rep. Byers, because this is what I said when the bill passed in the House, we are not done and we will not stop. And this is far from over. And, you know, the arc of the universe is long, arc of the moral universe is long, but it always bends towards justice. And I will tell you that for me, being on this panel, knowing that I have now a brother and a sister fighting with me in their part of their state, it lets me know that there are more for us than against us. And we will do everything in our power with every breath that we have to stop these bills, to stop these harmful bills, because we understand the impact. But also, I just would say to our trans siblings, our youth, you are valued, you are seen, you are loved, you are perfect the way that you are. God does not make a mistake. And to our families, to our moms, to our fathers, our aunts, our godparents, our uncles, keep fighting, keep loving, keep hugging, keep holding them close. Because guess what? God doesn't make a mistake. He makes no mistakes. She makes no mistakes. There's no mistake. And so, and I would say that I love you, and I will keep fighting until they throw me out of the house.
Thank you all so very much. I'm really glad that the panel is starting to close now, because I think that if we went any longer, I might start crying myself. So thank you all so much for being here, and for your voices and for the work that you do. We really appreciate it so much. And I think Fran Hutchins wrote in the chat here at one point, like, you matter, elections matter. The fact that the two of you are in your state houses, you are in your state legislatures, that is so incredibly important. And so thank you for taking that step forward to run and to do this work. And Ricardo, thank you for taking the step to be a leader in this space and to be able to do this work and to be here. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna bring in Fran now, I believe, to close us out for today. So Fran Hutchins, you're up.
Hi, folks. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for that incredible discussion. I really appreciate it. I especially loved that last part. I felt like you were speaking directly to the folks who need to hear it. And I just really cannot thank you enough for all that you're doing in your states and nationally for LGBTQ people. So thank you so much. Thank you for being on the panel, and thank you for showing up in all the ways that you do. And thank you to the Victory Institute for your work to increase the number of openly LGBTQ elected officials. As we can see, it's so important. Elections do matter, and having folks in these state houses matters so much. And you know, we cannot do this work without your support. I so appreciate everyone who has stayed and listened to the panel. And every dollar that we've raised tonight will go towards the work of these two incredible organizations, Equality Federation and Victory Institute. and to help us fight for the rights of trans youth and the entire LGBTQ community. So I know Joellen is putting it in the chat. So if you would please make a donation at that link, and don't forget it will be matched up to $5,000 tonight by Ian Zhang. And so thank you, Ian. And thank you to all of you who joined Ian in making a difference and making a donation tonight. Thank you so much for your support. We're going to be splitting again the proceeds from this fundraising event between the two organizations. And we just want to, again, I sound like I'm on my NPR pledge drive, but thank you. Thank you all so much for everything that you do. And I'm going to hand it back over to Ruben to close us out.
Thank you so much, Fran. Every day I get to see the difference that elected officials make. And I hope that you all got that as you're imagining these conversations happening about our kids, our babies, the people that need us most in our community, and imagining Representative Beyer and Representative Rayner there at those decision-making tables and being able to speak with passion and compassion and competence and skill and just bringing their extraordinary selves to those conversations. I think you'll all get why it's so important to have LGBTQ people in those places. But I'm also struck by how important it is to have somebody like Ricardo Martinez leading our statewide organizations and the work that Equality Federation does to support and prepare and help people that are fighting at these state levels that are just unimaginable for so many of us, especially if you're living in Washington, D.C. or places like this to fight that kind of fight in Texas. So I salute you, Equality Federation and Ricardo, and all the work that you do there. It's so important. You all are truly doing extraordinary things in extraordinary times, and I can't thank you enough. And I'm just so proud to be a part of this and to be able to sit with all of you on this virtual panel today. Thank you, everyone who has donated already. And thank you to Ian Zhang, a fantastic friend to both Victory and to Equality Federation, for being so generous and offering your support and making that match. This is a real match. I know there's probably a lot of folks out here who are in fundraising and sometimes raise their eyebrows. This is really a match. This is really a match. I talked with Ian last night, and it's really there. So we would love to have your support, and we definitely need your support to help build and support and recruit more leaders like Ricardo and Representative Beyer and Representative Rayner. So with that, we are going to go back to our networking piece. If you are an extrovert like myself and you're hungry for more interaction with strangers or people that you don't get to see all the time, when we close out this window, you're going to go back to that framework where you see all the tables. You can bounce around from table to table. You can take somebody to a one-on-one table, mix it up, definitely say hi to someone that you don't know yet. Have a great time, show each other some love. I think we all need that right now more than ever. And if you have an LGBTQ plus young person in your life, let them know how much we love them and how much we support them. I can't, emphasize how important that is. So thank you all. Great to see you. And with that, we will go back to our mingling. Thank you, everybody.